Georgia sees her sister before anyone else does. That's the thing about knowing someone your whole life. You recognize the shape of them before your brain fully arrives. The way Vera holds her shoulders, the particular stillness she gets when she's made a decision she's not sure about. Georgia is mid-laugh, champagne glass in hand, maid of honor saying something about the centerpieces, when her eyes catch movement near the entrance and her whole body just stops. Vera. Standing in the doorway of the cocktail hour like she hasn't been radio silent for 6 weeks. Like she didn't send a single card with, "I'm sorry, I won't be able to make it," written in that careful, controlled handwriting of hers. No explanation, no follow-up call, nothing. Georgia had texted 3 times after that. She'd stopped when the silence made the answer obvious. She thought she'd accepted it. Standing here now, she realizes she hadn't accepted a single thing. What she notices second, because Vera takes up so much space in her mind that everything else comes a beat late, is the man standing half a step behind her sister. Georgia doesn't know him. Not a cousin she'd forgotten, not a college friend who might have shown up in the background of a photo. He's tall, composed, wearing a suit that fits the occasion perfectly, even though nobody told him he was coming, because nobody knew. He stands the way people stand when they've been bracing for something. Weight forward, hands still, face arranged into an expression that is working very, very hard to stay neutral. That detail needles at Georgia. She can't say why. She's crossing the room before she decides to. Vera. She says her sister's name and it comes out wrong. Too sharp, too loaded. All 3 of the unspoken things underneath it pressing against the word at once. Vera's eyes meet hers, and Georgia watches her sister do the thing she's always done when she's been caught in something. A single measured breath through the nose. A reset. The face going carefully still. Their mother used to call it her poker face. Georgia always hated it because it meant she was about to be handled. "You came," Georgia says. Not a welcome. Not exactly an accusation. Something in between that she doesn't have a word for. "I needed to be here." Vera says it like it costs something. Not, "I wanted to." Not, "Of course I came, you're my sister." I needed to be here. Like a debt. Like an obligation she'd tried to talk herself out of and couldn't. "Who did you bring?" Vera opens her mouth, closes it, glances at the man behind her. Just a flick, quick enough that most people wouldn't catch it. Something passes between them, the kind of look that only exists between people who've already had the long conversation about whether or not to be here. Georgia catches the tail end of it and does not understand it yet. His name is Callum, not Vera. The man says it himself, quietly, like a correction, like he needs to be the one to introduce himself. And Georgia turns because the voice came from somewhere behind her, and Patrick is standing 5 feet away with a drink in his hand, and he is saying the name with a look on his face Georgia has never seen him wear. Not anger, not surprise, something older than both of those things. She looks at the man, Callum, and he is looking at Patrick with the same expression, like 2 people who once knew each other so completely that there's no point pretending otherwise. Like the last time they were in a room together, it ended in a way that neither of them has recovered from. Patrick doesn't move. Callum doesn't look away. And Vera, Georgia's sister, the one who RSVP'd no, the one who went silent, the one who needed to be here, is watching Georgia's face the way you watch someone standing too close to the edge of something. Like she's waiting to see whether she'll have to reach out. The string quartet starts the first song. Georgia chose it herself. Patrick said it made him emotional when she played it for him. It fills the whole room now, and Georgia stands in the middle of it with her champagne glass and her white dress and the weight of everyone looking at her like this is the happiest moment. And she thinks, Patrick told her he had no family left. He told her he was alone in the world. He said his brother died. She has never seen a dead man look at someone with that much rage. Georgia needs a second. She takes it by looking at her champagne glass, which is a very effective way to pretend you are composed when you are not. 3 beats. 4. Then she looks up, and Patrick is still standing there, and Callum is still standing there. And the distance between them, 5 feet, maybe 6, feels like something much older and much heavier than a room. Patrick moves first. He walks toward Georgia with the particular ease of a man who has practiced looking unworried, slides his hand to the small of her back, and says something about greeting the guests. His voice is steady. His hand is not. She feels the tension in his fingers, the slight too much of his grip. "We'll talk later," he says. To her, she thinks. But when she glances up, he's looking at Callum. Callum nods, once, like an agreement he didn't agree to make. Patrick steers Georgia away, and she lets him because her legs are moving before the decision to move arrives. And this is how the next 40 minutes happen. Patrick laughing too easily, touching her too often, steering her through the cocktail hour like a man who is managing something. And Georgia, smiling because the smiling is automatic, thinking about a night 3 years ago when she asked Patrick, gently over dinner, whether he had any family she should know about. He'd gone quiet in that way of his, the kind of quiet that feels like depth, like feeling, like a man who has survived something and carries it with dignity. He told her his parents were gone. He told her he had one brother, once. He told her the brother's name was Callum, that they'd been close as kids, that Callum had gotten into something, he didn't say what, just something, and that by the time it ended, there was nothing left to salvage. He told her Callum died 4 years ago. He said it like a man grieving. He said it the way you say something that cost you everything. Georgia had reached across the table and covered his hand with hers, and thought, this is a man who knows what loss does to a person. She thought it made them the same. She has spent 3 years believing his brother was dead. She builds her whole understanding of a person from what they've survived. That's her flaw, if it's a flaw. She leads with trust and fills in the rest later. Patrick knew that about her. He knew it within 6 months. She'd told him herself. If you've ever loved someone who turned out to be a careful architect of the version of themselves you were allowed to see, you already know where this is going. If you're new here, stay close. Subscribe, because this one doesn't let up. Back 3 months before the wedding, Vera called. This is the part Georgia has been turning over since that card arrived. They had been close once, genuinely close, the kind of sisters who finished each other's sentences and called each other first when anything happened. The drift had come gradually, the way drifts always do, through small silences that compounded into something neither of them named. Vera had opinions about Patrick, not loud ones, not ultimatum-level ones, just a certain quality of pause when Georgia talked about him, a specific way of asking questions that felt like she was looking for something. Georgia had decided she was projecting, that Vera was protective and that protectiveness read as doubt. She'd chosen Patrick over the doubt, and she'd told herself that was what healthy relationships required. The call 3 months ago had been different. Vera said she needed to tell Georgia something. She said she'd been sitting on it and she couldn't anymore. She said it wasn't an accusation, it was just something Georgia deserved to know before the wedding. That's what she'd almost said. Georgia had heard the pause. Patrick walked into the room before Vera could finish. Georgia had mouthed 1 second, and he'd shaken his head, smiling, pointing to his watch. They were late for the venue walkthrough. She'd told Vera she'd call back that night. She did not call back that night. Something came up, and then something else came up, and by the end of the week, she'd half convinced herself it wasn't urgent, that Vera would call again if it mattered. A month later came the regrets card, and Georgia decided the 2 things were unrelated and moved on. She was very good at moving on. She'd always thought of it as a strength. Now she is standing in the middle of her own wedding cocktail hour and watching Vera across the room, and Vera is watching her back. And the expression on her sister's face is the one Georgia used to see when they were children, and Vera had tried to warn her about something and been too late. Not guilt. Something that lives one floor below guilt. She excuses herself from the conversation she's in. She doesn't remember what it was about. She crosses the room toward her sister, and somewhere behind her, Patrick notices. She can feel it. The shift in the room's air when someone is watching you move. She'd spent 3 years reading Patrick like a book she thought she understood. Tonight, she finds out he was using someone else's cover. Vera doesn't wait for Georgia to speak first. "Not here," she says, the moment Georgia is close enough. Her voice is low, precise, the voice she uses when she is serious in a way that doesn't allow for argument. She glances past Georgia's shoulder, at Patrick, Georgia assumes, and then back. There's a hallway behind the bar. "Give me 4 minutes." "Vera, 4 minutes, Georgia." A beat. "Please." Georgia follows her. She doesn't make it obvious. She stops to hug Patrick's colleague's wife on the way, laughs at something she doesn't hear, keeps her face doing all the right things. By the time she slips behind the bar and into the narrow hallway that leads to the catering prep area, her heart rate has been doing something irregular for the past 10 minutes, and she has not once let it reach her expression. Vera is already there. Callum is not. Just the two of them, standing under fluorescent lighting that is doing nobody any favors. And for a moment, Georgia just looks at her sister and feels the full weight of how much she has missed her. Then she remembers why the distance exists, and the weight shifts. "You brought a dead man to my wedding," Georgia says. Flat, factual. The most absurd sentence she has ever said out loud. Vera exhales. "He's not dead." "I know he's not dead, Vera. He's currently drinking something at my cocktail hour." Georgia's voice stays even. She has always been better than people expect at keeping her voice even. "Patrick told me Callum died 4 years ago. Overdose. He cried when he told me. I held him while he cried." Vera closes her eyes briefly. When she opens them, something in her face has changed. Not softer, not harder, just more resolved. Like she has been preparing to say what she's about to say for long enough that she's past the part where she's afraid to say it. He didn't die. Patrick cut him off. Completely. Phone, money, everything. Then he told everyone who mattered that Callum was gone, so nobody would go looking. So nobody would find him. Georgia stares at her. "So nobody would find him and ask him questions," Vera continues. "About what happened. About why they stopped talking. About what Patrick did before he moved here and started over and met you." What did he do? It comes out as a statement, not a question. Georgia isn't sure she's ready for it to be a question yet. "Callum should tell you that part." Vera says it carefully, like she's considered every other option and landed here. "I found him 6 months ago. I wasn't looking for him specifically. I was looking for something else. And he found me first, actually. He'd been trying to reach you directly and couldn't get through." Georgia thinks about her spam filter. She thinks about the number she changed last year. She thinks about how Patrick had suggested she change it. "You're getting too many work calls on that line. Get a new one. I'll help you set it up." And how she thought that was him being thoughtful. She thinks about what kind of person suggests someone change their number. "Why didn't you just tell me?" Her voice comes out smaller than she intends. "When you called, 3 months ago, why didn't you just say it?" "Because you didn't call me back." The silence after that is very full. Georgia looks at the floor, then back up. "I was going to." "I know." Vera says it without accusation, which is somehow worse than if she'd said it with accusation. "And I was going to call again. But every time I picked up the phone, I thought, what if she doesn't believe me? What if she thinks I'm doing this because I never liked him? What if she chooses him? A pause. You'd already chosen him every other time I got close to saying something. Here's what I need you to sit with for a second. Vera had this information for 6 months. 6 months of watching her sister plan a wedding to a man she knew was built on a lie. What would you have done? Would you have pushed harder, or would the fear of losing her have kept you quiet too? Drop it in the comments. I want to know. Georgia is about to respond when she hears it. Patrick's voice. Close. Just around the corner of the hallway, talking to someone. The caterer, maybe, or one of the venue staff. Calm and easy and completely in control. The way he always sounds. The way she has always found so grounding. That steadiness of his. That certainty. She presses her back against the wall without meaning to. Vera watches her do it. Neither of them speaks. Patrick's voice gets closer for a moment. Closer. Closer. And then fades as he moves in a different direction. And Georgia lets out a breath she didn't realize she was holding, and hates herself slightly for holding it. Because this is her wedding. This is her venue. That is her fiancé's voice. And she just hid from it. She looks at Vera. Where's Callum now? Bar, Vera says. Waiting. Does Patrick know why he's here? Vera's expression shifts, just slightly. Just enough. Patrick knows exactly why he's here. The second he saw Callum's face, he knew. She pauses. The question you should be asking isn't whether Patrick knows. It's why, knowing, he hasn't left the building. Georgia thinks about that. She thinks about the way Patrick's hand gripped the small of her back. The "we'll talk later," directed at his supposedly dead brother. The complete absence of any move to remove Callum from the premises, call security, make a scene, do any of the things a wronged man would do if someone showed up uninvited at his wedding. Patrick hasn't done any of that. Patrick is still out there, working the room, making people laugh. A man who has nothing to hide makes noise when someone threatens him. Patrick is very, very quiet. And quiet, Georgia is starting to understand, is the loudest thing in the room. Georgia walks back into the cocktail hour like she's walking onto a stage. Smile adjusted. Posture settled. Eyes doing a quiet sweep of the room. Patrick near the windows, laughing with the best man. Back to her. Good. She turns the other direction and finds Callum exactly where Vera said he'd be, standing at the far end of the bar with a glass of something dark, watching the room the way soldiers watch rooms, like he's already clocked every exit. She sits on the bar stool beside him, doesn't look at him directly, orders a water she won't drink. "You've been trying to reach me," she says. "For about 8 months." His voice is low, no malice in it, which surprises her. She'd expected anger. He sounds more like a man who has been carrying something very heavy for a very long time and has finally put it down somewhere. "I found your old number first. Then it was disconnected. Took me a while to find another way through." Georgia thinks about the number change. Doesn't say anything yet. "Patrick told me you died," she says. "Overdose." He described the phone call he got. He described the funeral. She pauses. "He described your coffin." Callum nods slowly, like this doesn't surprise him, like he's heard some version of it before. "What did he say the coffin looked like?" "Dark wood. Simple. Said you would have wanted it that way." A sound comes from Callum that isn't quite a laugh. "I've been driving a 2019 Honda with a cracked windshield for 3 years. Dark wood caskets, a bit much." He sets his glass down. He's good at detail. He always was. Makes the lie easier to hold if the texture feels real. Georgia says nothing. She is cataloging everything. The ease of Patrick's grief when he told her. The specific way his voice had broken on, "I couldn't even go to the service." The way she'd squeezed his hand and thought, this man is not afraid to feel things. She had loved him partly for that. The openness of it. "What did he do?" she says. Same words as Vera. Different weight this time. Because now she's asking someone who was there. Callum is quiet for a moment, not hesitating, considering the order of things. Like he's told this story before and learned that it needs a particular shape to land correctly. "We had a company," he starts. 7 years ago. Small logistics firm, nothing glamorous, but it worked. We built it together from nothing. That part's true. He probably told you that much. What he didn't tell you is that somewhere around year 4, he started moving money. Not dramatically, just quietly. Small amounts, consistently, over about 18 months, into an account I didn't have visibility on. Georgia's water glass is cold against her palm. When it surfaced, and it always surfaces, the paper trail didn't point to him. It pointed to me. Callum says it without heat, which is almost harder to sit with than if he'd said it with fury. He'd built it that way from the start. My signature on things I don't remember signing. My access codes on transfers I didn't make. 18 months of construction, and by the time anyone was looking, it looked airtight. What happened to you? Investigation. 2 years of it. Everything frozen while they figured it out. Lost my house in the first 6 months. My fiancé left. I don't blame her. I couldn't explain something I didn't fully understand myself yet. He picks up his glass again. Charges were eventually dropped. Not enough to prosecute, but enough to wreck the reputation, which I think was always the actual goal. By the time I was clear, Patrick had relocated, had a new name for the business, had you. Georgia stares straight ahead at the bottles lined up behind the bar. She thinks about the version of Patrick she has in her head. The one who is steady, who is open, who cried about his dead brother and never seems rattled by anything. And she tries to lay it over the shape of what Callum is describing. And the two things will not sit on top of each other. They keep sliding. Why didn't you go to the police again? After you were cleared? I did. He says it simply. They weren't interested. No conviction, old case, moved jurisdictions. I was just a man with a grudge at that point. He looks at her for the first time directly. His eyes are the same shape as Patrick's. She hadn't noticed that before. It hits her sideways. Vera found me because she'd noticed some of the same account patterns you two share. She's sharp, your sister. Georgia turns to look at him fully now. What account patterns? Callum sets down his glass. The joint account Patrick suggested you open last year, he says. The one where your salary deposits. The one he manages. A pause. Georgia, how closely have you been watching that account? She hadn't been watching it. She'd trusted him with it completely. And Patrick knew that, because she'd told him she trusted him completely. She'd said those exact words. He'd smiled when she said them. Patrick finds her first. She's barely off the bar stool when his hand closes around her elbow. Not hard, not aggressive, just the particular grip of a man who has decided the conversation is happening now and is using touch to make that clear. His smile is on. It doesn't reach his eyes. She's not sure it ever did, and she's only noticing now. You've been talking to him. Not a question. His name is Callum, Georgia says. Your brother, who is alive. Patrick steers her, gently, smoothly, so that anyone watching would see a groom guiding his bride, nothing more, toward an alcove near the venue's side entrance, away from the bar, away from Callum, away from Vera, who Georgia clocks across the room watching them move, with an expression like someone watching a car approach a crossing she can't stop. In the alcove, Patrick drops the smile. "Whatever he told you," he starts, voice low and controlled. "You need to understand that Callum has been trying to damage me for years. He's not here because he cares about you. He's here because hurting you is the cleanest way to hurt me." Georgia looks at him. Really looks. The way she hasn't allowed herself to look in a long time. The way she'd trained herself out of when Vera's pauses got too pointed and her own questions got too loud. She looks at him the way you look at something when you finally decided you'd rather know than not know. "The joint account," she says. Something moves across Patrick's face. Fast. A flinch he almost catches in time. "What about it? How much is in it?" "Georgia, this isn't—" "How much is in it, Patrick?" He pivots. She watches him choose to pivot in real time, watches the calculation happen behind his eyes, the slight shift of the jaw, the decision to go a different direction. "He stole from me," Patrick says. "That's the part he won't tell you. Everything he said about the company, about the money, about what happened, he's reversed it. He did it to me. I spent 2 years rebuilding after what he took from me, and I made the decision to tell people he was gone because having him alive and active in my life was costing me things I couldn't afford to lose." A pause. "Including you, eventually." It's well constructed. She recognizes that. The bones of it are good, just enough truth scattered through to make the lie structural. She knows, because she knows Patrick, that this is what he does with truth. He uses just enough of it that the rest doesn't need to hold weight. "You described his coffin," she says. "Dark wood, simple. You said you couldn't go to the service." "I was grieving what I'd lost, the version of him I thought I had." "You cried." You cried, Patrick. In my arms. You made me hold you through losing a brother who was alive and living in a Honda with a cracked windshield." Her voice does not shake. She is mildly amazed by this. "That's not grief. That's a performance." Patrick stares at her. And this is the moment she'll think about afterward. Not the Callum revelation, not the account. This moment, right here, where she says something true and cuts through the construction and watches his face go very, very still. Because a man who had been wrongly accused would have heat in him, would have indignation, would have the fire of someone fighting to be believed. Patrick goes still. The way things go still when they are deciding what shape to take next. "You're going to believe a man you met 40 minutes ago over 3 years with me?" he says. Quiet now. Different kind of quiet. Not the managing quiet from earlier. Something with an edge in it. "I'm going to believe my own bank statements," Georgia says. "It's our wedding night." "I'm aware." He looks at her for a long moment, and something happens that she did not anticipate. His composure doesn't break. It doesn't crack, doesn't splinter, doesn't show her the thing underneath. He just looks at her with those steady eyes of his and says, almost gently, "You've always needed a reason not to trust good things. I knew that about you when I married you. I thought I could be patient enough." Georgia feels it land, feels it find the specific place it was aimed at, the part of her that has always, always been afraid she manufactures doubt where there isn't any. He knows that part. She gave it to him herself. She handed him the exact tool he just used on her, and she handed it over willingly and called it intimacy. "Get out of my way," she says. Patrick doesn't move immediately. 1 beat, 2. Then he steps aside. Georgia walks back into the cocktail hour, back into the string quartet and the champagne and the 200 people who came to watch her become his wife. And she finds Vera standing exactly where she thought she'd be, near the entrance, coat already in hand, like she never fully unpacked the possibility of having to leave quickly. Beside her, Callum. Georgia looks at her sister. "Tell me everything," she says. "All of it, right now." A man who has nothing to hide makes noise when someone threatens him. Patrick is very, very quiet. And quiet, Georgia is starting to understand, is the loudest thing in the room. Georgia listens. All of it. Standing near the entrance with her coat over her arm, and Vera on one side, and Callum on the other, while 200 people drink champagne 30 feet away, she listens to the rest of it. The account. The pattern Callum recognized because it was identical. Same construction, same timeline, same 18 months of quiet and consistent. The way Patrick had positioned himself as the sole manager of the joint account within 4 months of them opening it. The transfers Callum had traced to an account registered to a company name Georgia had never heard. She doesn't interrupt. She doesn't ask Callum to slow down. She stands there in her wedding dress, and she listens the way you listen when you understand that the only thing left to do is know the full shape of the thing. When he finishes, there's a moment of quiet. Then Georgia says, "How much is left in it?" Callum tells her the number. It's not nothing. It's also not what it was 14 months ago, and the distance between those two figures is its own kind of sentence. Vera reaches for her hand. Georgia lets her take it. Here's what she doesn't do. She doesn't cry. She doesn't come apart in the doorway of her own wedding venue, in front of the string quartet and the champagne tower and the centerpieces she spent 4 months choosing. She stands there, and she feels the full weight of it. The 3 years, the coffin that was never built, the grief she held for him, the account she never checked because she trusted him the way she'd told him she did. And she lets it be exactly as heavy as it is. Then she puts it down. Just for now. Just enough to move. She finds the venue coordinator near the bar. The conversation takes about 90 seconds. The woman's expression does something complicated, and then goes very professional, and she nods, and she moves off quietly in the direction of the ceremony space. Then Georgia crosses the room to Patrick. He's still working it, still laughing, still holding his drink like a prop in a performance he wrote himself. He sees her coming, and something shifts in his face, a recalibration, and he starts to arrange the smile. She stops in front of him, close enough that this is a private conversation, far enough that she can breathe. "The ceremony's not happening," she says. Patrick looks at her. The smile doesn't fully form. "Georgia, I'm not asking you. I'm telling you." She keeps her voice level. It's the easiest thing she's done all night. "I'm going to need you to leave. The venue will help you with that if you need help." He looks at her for a long moment, and she watches him calculate, watches him consider the angles, watches him look around the room at 200 witnesses and decide what this costs him versus what fighting costs him. That's the thing about men like Patrick. Everything is a cost-benefit. Even this. "You'll regret this," he says. Quiet, just for her. "I already regret things," Georgia says. "I'm very practiced at it. I'll be fine." She takes off the ring. She doesn't make theater of it. No held-up hand, no crowd moment, no punctuation. She just slides it off her finger and places it in his palm, like she's returning something borrowed. And then she turns around and walks back toward her sister. Behind her, she hears the room begin to understand that something has shifted. The murmur that starts when people sense a change before they can name it. She doesn't turn around. Vera meets her halfway across the floor. They stand together and Georgia looks at her sister. Really looks, the way she should have been looking for the past 3 years. The way she would have if she hadn't been so certain she already knew everything worth seeing. And she thinks about the call she didn't return, the card she put away, the pauses she talked herself out of trusting. "I should have called you back," Georgia says. Vera's eyes go bright at the edges. "Yeah," she says softly. "You really should have." It breaks something loose. Not completely, not in a way that fixes 3 years of distance in 30 seconds, but enough. Georgia breathes out. Here's what I keep coming back to. Patrick spent 3 years studying Georgia. He learned her fears, her blind spots, the exact tender place where doubt lives in her, and he used every single one of them. He was patient and specific and very, very good. But Vera was patient too. Vera waited and called and sent the card and showed up in the green dress with the man Patrick had declared dead. Vera loved Georgia without needing Georgia to make it easy, and Georgia, who had spent 3 years choosing to look away from the things that made her uncomfortable, chose tonight to look. That's not a small thing. That never is. You already knew, didn't you? The moment Patrick's hand gripped her back and his voice stayed too steady, you knew. We always know. We just need someone to sit with us in it long enough to trust what we're seeing. That's why we're here. If this one got under your skin, and I think it did, you need to watch the one I just put up about the woman who found out her entire friend group had a second chat without her. Different story, same architecture. I'll see you there. I'm Honey. People always show you who they are. Wet Teddy just slows it down. I'll see you in the next one.